Now I know this is most certainly not what I told you my next video would be, but various things happened and basically everything I had planned is now either postponed or cancelled. I also know that what I'm talking about today isn't really something that the general masses have been hyping up. For me though, and quite a few other people in this specific fandom, it's something we've all been looking forward to, perhaps more than anything else, for a bloody long time now. For not too long ago, on February 28th, we saw the simultaneous global release of Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin Part 1. Blue-Eyed Casval. Or to put it into my own terms, Shaznable the movie. This thing is based on the well-renowned and acclaimed manga of the same name by Yoshikazu Yasuhiko and is set to be 4 60-minute episodes in total that will probably be finished airing by the end of 2016. I haven't actually read the manga myself, as I currently only own 2 of these insanely large, heavy and expensive volumes and was waiting until I owned all of it until I actually got stuck in. With that said, I wasn't planning on waiting any longer than I had to watch the adaptation, and thus today I shall be reviving an old video series that I almost forgot I started. After a short action-packed intro sequence on a battlefield during the early stages of the One-Year War, we then rewind 11 years to Universal Century 0068 and our story begins. At this stage, this thing is not a grand-scale war between massive factions, but rather a tale of specific interactions and domestic conflicts between important figures within the Republic of Zeon. We are soon introduced to our main characters, Casval Rem Daikun and Artesia Som Daikun, long before they grew into the iconic faces of Shah Aznable and Sailor Mass we're all familiar with. It's an origin story in its truest form, both showing us the earliest important moments of these characters' lives and giving the untold history of conspiracy spearheaded by the House of Zabi leading up to the rise of the Principality of Zeon. It's these events that mark the early motions that would eventually break into their Declaration of Independence, starting the One-Year War of 0079. Right, now if absolutely none of that brief rundown made sense to you, then that means you probably haven't seen the original Mobile Suit Gundam series or its film compilations. And whilst this is set before that, I would say it's absolutely not something you should be watching as your first entry into the franchise. You could do it, but that's not really how this story was meant to be consumed. The events of this first episode are taken directly from volume 5 of the manga after all, as that is all new material and I'm sure Sunrise didn't want to be simply reanimating something they've already made before. But in this case, not like when I reviewed Unicorn, it is only 1 series or 3 films you need to watch before you're all ready to get the most out of this thing. With that said, for me, watching this was an absolutely wonderful experience, as with every new entry into Universal Century like this comes many more layers of interesting history to really get my teeth into. I must say though, this thing's trailers and that 7-minute preview we got a few weeks ago did make this thing out to be a lot more action focused than it ended up being. Aside from a 3-minute battle sequence at the start and a juncture involving a gun tank going mad in the middle of a city, it was the power of its dialogue and interesting political struggles being the force behind what made it so interesting. Seeing all these important characters in their youth, even before I talk about Shah and Sailor, seeing amazing people like Ramba Ral before he became the Blue Giant reminded me why I was so off my tits on happiness when the guy showed up in Build Fighters. In this episode we see how Dozle Zabi gets his iconic scars and he's all around just being the king of Gar and general massitude that we've always loved him for. But man, I've got to say, seeing Cassilia Zabi in her youth left me reacting in a way I really wasn't expecting to. I mean, this woman has always been important and interesting, but she really did steal the show with her actions and how she's presented herself in this thing, and she even got her censored baps out at one point. Because, you know, 5 seconds of uncensored nipple are going to blow up those Blu-ray sales more than the promise of a pre-order exclusive microfiber mini towel. Now on to Casval, which is what we'll be calling him here because this is many years before he became the Shaznable man we all know and love. But from what we see here in his youth, it's clear this guy is destined for greatness, as for an 11-year-old, the swag levels he displays are completely off the charts. He's brimming with that confidence we know him for and stays strong and unwavering in everything he stands for, not budging an inch even under serious pressure from other powerful characters. I was so looking forward to seeing how this guy lived before he became stained with the blood of the battlefield, and it was absolutely a display worthy of one of the most iconic figures in the medium. Then we come on to Artesia, and while Sailor never had the same presence in Universal Century as Shah does, she's still very important. However, she is only 6 years old in this episode, and thus we couldn't expect her to be a battle-hardened war hero anytime soon. What we could expect though, is exactly what we got. She was absolutely adorable. That's about it. She's the kind of girl my boy Kenneth Bolido would go loopy for.
That ass.
Now we come on to what I was most skeptical about when it came to this thing based on all the early screenshots and trailers that were released. You all know it was coming. I've made a habit of complaining about this whenever it's been a factor in anything, but yes, everything mechanical in this series is animated using CGI. This isn't the same kind of CG we saw in Unicorn, for example, where it was used only for certain very intricate things like the RX-Zero's transformation and keeping it looking as close to the traditional animation as possible. It's all CG here, and it's all very obviously CG, but surprisingly, for the most part, I didn't hate it. As a matter of fact, in the intro sequence where it was used the most, and in one battle that took place later on, the incredibly dynamic and aggressive motion of the mobile suits was actually somewhat spectacular. There was so much going on the screen, and with all the excellent explosion effects and an incredible use of 3D camera motion, it made for a bloody impressive display of war. There was certainly a few moments that looked completely off though, like whenever a character was standing by a vehicle or when they used CGI to animate crowds or horses. It was pretty iffy. There's also the fact that whilst the use of CG in high-paced action scenes did aid in some excellent blood-pumping battle choreography, it really did feel weird to see a Zaku 2 animated in this way. This is very much a personal bias, but that's a 50-year-old design and it just feels weird to me seeing it like this, but in a way I guess I really can't describe. The rest of the animation was absolutely spot on though, really nothing I can say against it, but for me the real winner in the origin is quite frankly how incredible both the art style and character designs are. I've always loved the designs of these characters regardless, but the young design for Casval was fantastic, especially in regard to his wardrobe and how everything he wore gave a perfect image of the life he's been leading up to this point. Then of course there's the young design for Cassilia Zabi, which pretty much blew me away. One of my favourite female designs of all time now, and I can definitely say I would happily let that woman break me in half. And if you don't feel the same way, then you're probably lying. That's all I really have to say about that. So far the music feels pretty solid. Haven't had a chance to check it out properly yet, but I am definitely looking forward to the OST coming out in April so I can give it a good listen. Then there's the voice acting, which I have to say disappointed me slightly on the grounds of this thing having Casval in it instead of Shah Aznable meant that we only got like 3 lines from Shuichi Ikeda, a man whose voice I'm partially addicted to. That aside though, it was a wonderful display from everyone involved, and whilst it wasn't Shuichi Ikeda for a good reason, the woman that voices Casval does do an amazing job of it. I also gave the dub a quick listen from the 7-minute preview, and it definitely sounded on point, so no matter what your preference is, you're not going to be disappointed. So there we go, that's everything I wanted to say about this first episode of Gundam The Origin, and to be honest, I said enough for it to be a review. But it's not finished yet, so it's not. This is totally different to a review. Shut up. I don't even need to tell you what the answer to that question is, do I? Of course it's met the hype, it was absolutely brilliant, and if you've seen Mobile Suit Gundam, then you definitely need to get this to the top of your watch list. If you want to check this thing out, then you can head over to daisuki.net and rent it for $6.99, which is a little under £5, and I'm sure a lot of you are very angry at the thought of having to pay for a stream, but it's worth it, I assure you. The first 7 minutes are available over on the Gundaminfo YouTube channel in both dub and sub, so if you wanted to have a preview before paying for it, then that's where you want to go. And if you want to get it on Blu-ray, it's getting released in April worldwide. Right Stuff in America, All the Anime in the UK, and Madman in Australia. So if you're willing to pay $100 for 60 minutes like this nutter is, you can go ahead and pre-order the collector's edition. All the links to all of that are in the description. Sorry again for my failing to make all those videos I said I would make, and I may or may not. See you next week. Guys, check him out, look, he's done. Oh, he's beautiful, he's so big. I took his arm off because it was in frame though, he's not just dropped his arm, he's battle damage.